Why did you decide to cut your parents out of your life? Because they chose their addiction to drama over their relationship with their only grandchild, and I finally realized some toxic patterns can't be fixed. My parents had always thrived on chaos. Every family gathering turned into a screaming match. Every holiday became a competition for who could be the most offended. When I got married, they hated my husband because he was too quiet and didn't engage with their constant fighting. When we had our daughter, I hoped becoming grandparents would change them. For a while, it seemed like it had. They were gentler around baby Sophie, and family visits were actually pleasant. But as Sophie got older and started talking, my parents began using her as a weapon in their endless battles with each other. They'd pump her for information about what mommy and daddy said about grandma and grandpa. They'd badmouth each other to a 4-year-old, trying to get her to pick sides. When Sophie came home from their house asking why grandpa is mean to grandma and whether mommy and daddy were going to get divorced like grandma and grandpa should, I knew things had gone too far. I tried setting boundaries. No fighting in front of Sophie. No involving her in adult problems. No using her to pass messages between them. They agreed to the rules but broke them within hours. During Sophie's 5th birthday party, they got into a screaming match about who bought the better present. Sophie hid under the table crying while they yelled at each other across the living room. That was my breaking point. I told them they needed family therapy if they wanted to see Sophie again. They laughed and said I was being dramatic. "We're not that bad," Mom said. "Kids need to learn that families fight sometimes." But Sophie started having nightmares after every visit. She'd ask me if Grandma and Grandpa were going to yell at her too. The final straw came when Sophie drew a picture at school of our family. She drew herself, me, and my husband smiling. Then she drew my parents in a separate corner with angry faces and scribbled over them with black crayon. Her teacher called me concerned about what was happening at home. I had to explain that the chaos wasn't in our house. It was what Sophie experienced at her grandparents'. I gave my parents one last chance. I invited them for dinner and explained how their behavior was affecting Sophie's mental health. Instead of listening, they blamed me for being too sensitive and said I was trying to turn their granddaughter against them. "Sophie needs to toughen up," Dad said. "The real world isn't all sunshine and rainbows." That's when I realized they saw a 5-year-old's emotional well-being as less important than their right to continue their toxic patterns. I told them they couldn't see Sophie anymore until they got help for their relationship and learned how to behave around children. They chose their dysfunction over their granddaughter. They never even tried therapy or apologized. 3 years later, they still send birthday cards to Sophie as if nothing happened, refusing to acknowledge that their behavior caused this separation. Sophie is 8 now and doesn't ask about her grandparents anymore. She's a happy, secure kid who's never seen adults scream at each other in her own home. Sometimes protecting your child means accepting that even family members can be too toxic to keep around. The hardest part of being a parent isn't dealing with strangers who might hurt your kid. It's setting boundaries with people you love who refuse to change.